Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to week 6 in the NFL. Sorry I missed you last week. Had some technical difficulties as we were uploading this and ended up not being able to get it out due to that, but my bad. Anyways, on to week 6. I say we could just kind of start out here with where we usually do. At our quarterback position, lots of good plays. Cam Newton practiced today, should be good to go. That should have a huge team total. I think the over-under sitting somewhere right around 53.5, 54, but nothing official yet. So you can definitely look at Cam Newton there. For those of you who are just joining me, though, I do set a cash game-orientated lineup here. So you're not going to see anything too off the wall in terms of trying to get off somebody just due to projected ownership. I'm really just targeting players with good floors, decent ceilings, and guys who I think are gonna score the most points. So with that being said, let's scroll down, and I'm gonna go with some Brian Hoyer. If you guys want some good information on Brian Hoyer, make sure to hit up John Proctor on Twitter. I believe it's at John Proctor DFS. He's a huge Brian Hoyer fan. Lots of good stats that he'll be able to give you, but really Hoyer's just been excellent sitting. Since getting his first full start, which came in week 3, he's posted no fewer than 22 DraftKings points and has not thrown an interception in that same time span. So since week 3, he's going to be going up against Jaguars at home. Chicago has an implied team total at 25 points, and the Jags, they're not like atrocious against the pass, but they're a little worse than league average, giving up 0.45 points per attempt to opposing teams' quarterbacks. And Hoyer's been throwing the ball a lot, which should help Hoyer's outcome here, even though the Jags are, just kind of meh against the pass. The Bears are scoring 50% of their TDs via pass as opposed to 14% via rush. So the other stuff's coming via field goals and defense. But that's just a huge discrepancy there between those two. There's a big, very, very large difference. So I think targeting Hoyer is fine at home, good team total, and super cheap. There is one other guy that you can target who's actually a little bit cheaper than Hoyer, and his name is Tyrod Taylor. He's also at home going against the Niners, who always accelerate the opposing team's plays. So you should see a little bit more plays, a little bit more pass attempts out of Buffalo in general, obviously including Tyrod Taylor. But I'm not going to do it in cash. I don't even think he's in play on FanDuel. He's like a full 2.5K more than some of the other cheaper quarterbacks. It's just not even close. Great GPP play over on FanDuel just because of that. His price is not in a range where people are typically going to be targeting a player like that. Anyways, let's stick to DraftKings. Let's get our next running back here, and we're going to go full chalk, and we're going to get Le'Veon Bell. I really don't think I need to say a whole lot about this. In fact, one of the things that's kind of interesting is if you go to the flex here, I think there's 6 players who are actually more expensive than the $7,900 price tag, and I think he has the highest floor out of all of them, minus Antonio Brown, and I think he also has the highest ceiling out of all of these players. Like, there's no reason that he can't find the end zone twice, catch 6 passes, and have 180 all-purpose yards. That ceiling is through the roof. So I don't know why you're looking at any of these other players when his price is at $7,900. And I touched on it. It's just really the red zone opportunity too. We haven't seen it a whole lot this year. I think he's got like 65% of his team's red zone of his team's red zone market share, but he's also only seen like 3 touches or something like that, as opposed to D'Angelo Williams 1 touch inside the 10 and the 20. So not a whole lot to go in there, but we know from previous years that is his territory alone. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on him. Lev Bell, 7,900, pretty much a lock for me. Not really wanting to fade him in cash. So let's go to somebody who I honestly am having a hard time stomaching. this play, but Tavon Austin, the more and more I look at it, the more and more I keep doing it. I think this is a week where I really want to get Bell and another high-end running back, who I'll touch on a little bit later. So we have to find value at our wide receiver position, at least one, most likely two. I'm a little hesitant to go back to Curly, even though he was seeing a very dominant market share of his targets. I think something like 33%. So I'm not entirely sure how that's going to look with Kaepernick under center. So this keeps me coming back to Tavon Austin, who's going to be going up against the Lions, who currently ranked 24th in Football Outsiders pass DVOA metric, and they ranked 28th in 444.com's schedule adjusted fantasy points metric. So great matchup. He's also seeing the targets that we want. He's got 8 targets, no less than 8 targets in a game, and I think he's got like 30% to the T in terms of his team's market share of targets. So don't get me wrong, like I said, I have my concerns with Austin, so I think it's totally fine if you want to spend down somewhere else, and like some of these other plays I'm going to go over. And if the cast comes off Sammy Coates, obviously I think he's a great play. And then you can look at Meredith for a few hundred more as well. I think they're both right around $4,100. So just a few $100 above Tavon. But Tavon's the guy that I've got for this roster. One of those other expensive running backs I guess we can grab now. $6,900, LeSean McCoy. Much like Bell, I think McCoy is a lock for me this week. Buffalo has a team total sitting at 25.7 points, or their implied team total, and they're huge favorites. They're 7.5 home favorites. So I think if you pair that with the fact that the 49ers are allowing 32 touches and 5 yards per attempt to opposing teams' running backs, McCoy is without a doubt the best running back play on the week, especially because he's a grand cheaper than Bell. Like, being price agnostic, it's Bell, but I think if you're truly trying to pinch some dollars here, then you could fade Bell. I don't recommend it. You could, and you could do McCoy as your number one running back and get a grand to spend, at a wide receiver or a quarterback, something along those lines. So I've got McCoy projected very close to Bell. PPR projections for Bell, I've got him at like 26.5 points, and I've got LeSean McCoy just under 25 points. So it's very, very close, but there is a pretty large price gap here between the two, which is why I say that about McCoy. Let's tell you what, let's knock out our defense here, just because we can see kind of our average remaining, and not DST. Bears. We're going to go with the Bears at defense. They're $2,300. Jacksonville's team total, I typically like to target a lower team total. They're hovering right at 22 points for an implied team total, but it's also not that high, right? So I also don't think that there's really a lock at the defensive spot. If you want to, I mean, you could definitely take like Steelers versus Miami, but I would prefer to target Tannehill when he's away. I think that Tennessee is also not that bad of a play. It's just I'm trying to work as much, because I've paid up for these running backs. I'm trying to save some money elsewhere, and the spot I'm doing that is with the Bears. Blake Bortles is also in the top 5 in terms of turnovers for quarterbacks. So that's really where you're getting your points out of your defense, is generating those turnovers, pick sixes. Super hard to predict, right? Punt returns, super hard to predict, but what we can do is take a look at and see what quarterbacks are making the most mistakes, and isolate our defenses down that way. For $2,300, I'll take the Bears at home versus Blake Bortles. Let's get another wide receiver, and I've got Jeremy Maclin at $6,300. It's a very, very solid price. He's coming off his bye, and while he's not the sexiest of names in the wide receiver category, he is seeing 23% of his team's market share of targets. Kansas City also has a healthy implied team total sitting at 23.5 points, and will have what I think, other than targeting the Saints, other than maybe targeting even Detroit's pass defense, I think the Oakland Raiders are like one of the best teams to target when you're looking at isolating your wide receivers. And they rank 31st worst in adjusted fantasy points allowed, which is a 444.com's metric. They're allowing a 64% catch rate and are giving up 1.4 TDs per game to opposing teams' wideouts. So not a sexy name, but has everything that we look for. Great matchup. I think that price is way too low in all honesty. And he's a great PPR monster. He's got the consuming a ton of his team's targets. So Jeremy Maclin is our second wide receiver. Let's grab our third wide receiver, and we're gonna get Jarvis Landry. And very similar to Maclin too, while the price isn't as good, I think it's still great this week in terms of overall pricing. I think regardless of your roster construction, Landry needs to be in it. Him and Fitzgerald, but Fitzgerald he's playing Monday night, so he's only available in those non-Sunday only slates, obviously. And him and Fitz are my favorite wideouts this week. Him and Allen Robinson too. Fitzgerald and Maclin, and Landry have phenomenal price tags. Pittsburgh ranks below average in Football Outsiders pass DVO metric, and they're allowing a 64% catch rate and 184 yards to opposing wide receivers through the first 5 weeks. Miami's team total's a little low, but I think Landry's overall market share of targets that he's getting, which is sitting at 32% for his team, helps negate that low implied team total. And on full point per reception sites like DraftKings here, I think, I just think that market share helps kind of take out the low implied team total there and kind of balances it out. And he's also going to go up against Sean Davis, who ranks 110th worst according to Pro Football Focus's player grades for the cornerback position. So really, really like Landry. Projects really well in our projection system. So Landry, much like Bell, honestly kind of a lock. I tend to just keep putting in Bell and Landry and then working around those. Those are definitely two of my core players. I'm totally fine if you want to fade them a little bit. If you're entering 80, 90 lineups, something like that, obviously it's good just to get different exposure. But, if you're firing 10 lineups in the Millie Maker, you're firing 10 lineups or let's say 3 lineups in a 3 max entry, then these are two guys that I'm just on. I wouldn't fade them in a 3 max entry, while typically I would usually fade them in like one of the lineups just to not overexpose myself. I'm really bullish on these guys. So let's see what else. We've got a tight end and a flex left. So let's grab our tight end, and we're gonna go with Jimmy Graham at the tight end spot for $4,900. I think this is the first time that I've spent over $3,000 on a tight end in cash. And it's really, Graham is looking like it was when he was with the Saints. He's got 8 and 9 targets over the past 2 weeks, and he's got back-to-back 100-yard games. I think Seattle's also wanting to just utilize him appropriately. He's got a decent amount of red zone targets. He's got 3 targets over in his last 2 games. So with them being a really big favorite at 6.5 points, and also having one of the higher implied team totals sitting at 26 points, I think Graham is a phenomenal play at that price point. There are other guys that you can definitely pivot down to. Just don't think you need to unless you want a higher end wide receiver. Once again, not something I think you need to do, because while they aren't sexy names, they're getting you everything that you need in terms of market share or an implied team total that is like, Maclin and Landry. So we've got our flex here, and this is one where I'm still a little undecided on. I'll start out with the more expensive guy, Carlos Hyde. I think it's truly the Hyde show in San Francisco. They're scoring 48% of their TDs via a rush play, and Hyde is second in the league, right behind Melvin Gordon with 23 attempts inside the red zone. He also has 4 attempts inside the 5, which I think he's tied for second with a handful of other running backs, but still up there with attempts inside the 5. And he's converted 3 of those 4 attempts into touchdowns. And what concerns me about Hyde, though, is he's on the road. I don't like to necessarily target team or running backs who are on the road. His team also isn't a favorite, and they have a low implied team total of 19.5 points, 20 points, something like that. Those are like huge red flags for me. It's just really hard to ignore the volume. And then Buffalo's a decent matchup for running backs as well. So with that being said, I'll kind of give you another option here at flex. And his name is Ryan Matthews. And he comes in at 4,900, so easy pivot if you want to go down to him. And the Niners have a good implied team total. Or the Niners. The Eagles have a good implied team total. And I think they're 2.5 point favorites, and that team total sitting at 23.5 points. So while they're on the road, they're still a favorite, and they still have a projected team total. Washington is also allowing 5.3 yards per attempt and 1.5 TDs to opposing teams' running backs. And Matthews actually has a league high 7 attempts inside the 5-yard line, and that's even with him playing one less game than a lot of other running backs as well. So like I said, the volume is there for Hyde. Ryan Matthews gets a little bit of his workload eaten by Sproles, and he just also can't stay healthy. I know that it's silly to even say this, but honestly, he's one of those players where within the first quarter, he's, fractures his clavicle or something ridiculous. That's just the most Ryan Matthews thing to happen. So a little silly bringing that up, but it's definitely in the back of my mind. So that's kind of where I give you Hyde and Ryan Matthews at the running back spot here. Both great plays, and two running backs at that price point that I'm targeting heavily as well. But yeah, you've got $300 left over here. So a handful of other different things that you can do. Like I said, if you're, now that we've gone to Matthews, if you're not on Austin, Tavon Austin as a wide receiver at $4,200, we do have a few different options here. We've got Tajay Sharp, Meredith, and then if you're still okay with Curley, you still think he's going to receive a large share of those targets in San Francisco. Now that we've gotten off of Hyde, I think going to Curley is fine too. But I think the play here would definitely be Meredith to pair up with Hoyer. Alrighty, guys. Good luck in week 6, and we'll see you next week.